Welcome to the PAWSCAST, and now here are our hosts, Vandivier and Tyjae B.
Hi, today we're joined by Emily Llewellyn, LGPC and staff counselor at Frostburg State University's Counseling and Psychological Services. I'm Dr. Amanda Vandivier.
And I'm Tyjae Bolton, and today we're going to be talking about stress.
So, in our society, we hear a lot about stress and how our society deals with stress. It seems like we're constantly under stress. We don't take vacations. We don't even take our whole 2 weeks of vacation. We don't take sick time when we need it. And we're just overall a pretty stressed out bunch. So stress is always phrased as a bad thing, but is it? Can you talk to us about the positive and negative aspects of stress?
Yeah, so there is a little metaphor that I like to use when talking about stress. So, let's say I had a glass of water and I was holding it. I had to hold it for 2 minutes. That's probably pretty reasonable. I could do that, a full 16-ounce glass of water. Not really going to get a whole lot of negative side effects. Maybe there might be annoying, but that might be it. Now, if I had to hold that glass of water for 6 hours, my arm's probably going to hurt the next day. I'm probably going to be irritated. I'm going to be annoyed because I can't sit it down. I have to hold it for a full 24 hours and I can't sit it down. I'm not going to get any sleep. I'm not going to eat anything probably. I'm going to be miserable with my existence. Stress is the glass of water. It's not about whether or not you feel it, because stress is very natural. It's a human response to things going on in the environment around you. It's how long we hold on to it, and it's how long it lasts that can come with more negative side effects. Are there positives to it? I mean, it is your body's natural reaction to when things are going wrong. It helps you survive. It's when you're stuck in that survival mode, you get stuck there for days, weeks, months, years. That's when we start to really, see the negative side effects, because there's no breaks from it. Your body doesn't get the chance to get out of it. It doesn't relax.
Yeah, I know, I might have said this once or twice in my lifetime too. As a college student, I do well when I have the deadline approaching and suddenly I have to get that paper written. I have to get that test studied for. And it does increase my stress levels, but it also seems to help me to focus better. Do you think that's how it works, or what do you think?
No, I definitely. So,
are we talking ourselves into that mentality?
So I think there's a couple of things that go on with that. One is that we avoid things that cause us stress because it's not necessarily pleasant, especially if we're people that are susceptible to stress happening and it overwhelms us a lot of the time. So there's also this idea of perfectionism and having to do things perfectly, and if it's not done perfectly, then then I'm gonna avoid it because that's gonna cause me stress if I can't do it perfectly. Or I have to start it and I have to complete it in one sitting. I find that a lot with people. So what happens is that once that date starts approaching and it's closer, the anxiety of getting it done and getting a grade and doing well on it starts to outweigh that avoidance of perfectionism. And I think that having an end date is always a good thing too. If you know where it's going to end, that no matter what, the stress is going to be relieved at the test date or the turn-in for this big project. I think we've all felt the relief of shutting all of the tabs.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes, and you're just oh, finally. That's the end of that stress then. So those things, for sure. That's when stress ends for you. It makes sense to be stressed during those times. Chronic stress is when we start running into issues.
You mentioned anxiety. So in our culture, it seems like we use stress and anxiety interchangeably. So what are the differences between stress and anxiety?
Sure. So I think that anxiety is chronic stress. I think it is a long-term, so I think it's long-term, and in addition to that, I think it's when sometimes there's no reason. You don't really have anything that makes sense. Your body is just kind of stuck in, oh my gosh, something's wrong. You check in, you're well, what is it bringing? What's going on? I don't know. It's just something's going wrong. Or the what ifs. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? worst case scenarios, catastrophizing everything, assuming it's going to be the worst. I often joke with my clients that anxiety makes your brain really bad at statistics. Everything is either 100% or 0%. And it's most of the time it's 0% chance of the good thing happening and 100% chance of the worst case scenario happening. And that's just, I mean, in reality, that's just not what's a realistic thing. That's not how those things work.
That makes sense. So when we start to feel stressed, we may all experience similar feelings, like that heart pounding, our heart starts to raise, the sweaty hands, or even our brains may struggle to work. I think we've all sat down at that test that we've studied for like 50 hours, and we sit down, we look at the test, and we don't know a single answer because our brain just shuts down. So, what's happening in our body that makes us feel that way? Why does that happen to us? It doesn't seem very functional.
So it's not functional for making executive decisions, but it is functional for survival.
Oh, good. Okay.
I like that.
So I'm going to break down, we're going to sciencey. So there's this system in your body called the HPA axis. It stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And it's the system that produces cortisol, which is what helps your body deal with stress for longer periods of time. So really simplifying it, basically when your body starts to feel anxiety, when it starts to feel stress, your body releases epinephrine and norepinephrine. That signals to the hypothalamus, oh my gosh, we're stressed. Hey, pituitary, command center's calling. Pituitary, we need some cortisol. Can you reach out to the adrenal glands, which are what's on your kidneys? Can you let them know that we need some of that starting to pump through our body? And so pituitary is like, yep, got it. Sends the signal down to the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands start to release cortisol. Now, this is a negative feedback loop, meaning that there are receptors in the hypothalamus and another part of the brain that's totally slipping my mind. But the hypothalamus, will just keep it, really, really simple. There are signals there that let it know when the body has produced too much cortisol and it's time to stop. With people who have chronic stress, it's like the off switch never happens. It's like those sensors have malfunctioned in some way, or they're experiencing so many stressors in a row that they never stop producing cortisol. There's always the signal of, no, we're stressed, we have to keep doing that. And what happens is that it shuts off the executive part of your brain, which is like the front part, your frontal lobe, and it shuts down other systems like your digestive system. I'm sure we've all been so stressed that we're like, I literally cannot put any food or drink in my body. Please do not make me do this.
Yeah.
Because if you do, maybe I'll puke, maybe I'll get really nauseous, maybe I have to stay in the bathroom. I can't do it. And so the only things that keeps kind of functioning and going are blood flow, respiratory, cardiovascular. It's making sure that you have enough energy to fight, flight, freeze, whatever your stress response is.
Yeah. So basically, we're just trying to look at the basic needs of the body as opposed to the higher functioning abilities.
Yeah.
And there goes the test answers.
Right, exactly.
But you're going to keep breathing and your heart's going to keep beating.
Right. You are going to be very aware that you need to leave or that you need to fight whatever the stressor is. But knowing what anything is, you can't make executive decisions. Those aren't a thing.
That's interesting because I used to think that stress was a part of my personality. Always being stressed, growing up, having siblings, and I remember you mentioned if you have, in the past podcast you mentioned if you have other siblings who may have bigger needs than you, sometimes you may get pushed aside a little bit, and I feel like I battled a lot with that growing up. So that's why I feel like I was always under stress. I was always making sure everything was okay. If I could do that in the situation, then that was my thing. So, but I've noticed that other people don't deal with stress as well as I do. So why do you think that is?
So I think there's lots of factors that go into this. One of the ones that I always check for is resiliency, which is basically just how much grit do people have? How much is their distress tolerance? How much can they stand? And can they cope with it in a healthy way? Because sometimes people carry around lots of stress, but the way that they're dealing with it is maybe they're self-harming, maybe they're engaging in lots of substance use, maybe they're, maybe they don't talk to anybody and they like, you know, are engaging in something that's unhealthy. And so that's one of the factors. There's also things like genetics, like things that are outside of your control, things that you don't have control over, because there are genetic anxiety disorders that people deal with. Yeah, so, you know, mental health disorders very much like biological health, you know, issues that you run into. If, you know that heart disease runs through your family, diabetes, maybe you have autoimmune diseases that run through your family. Anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, they all function in the exact same way. That if you have a family member who has been diagnosed with this, you are more likely to be carrying kind of the same thing. Also, just how you're raised. If your parents don't know how to deal with stress, or you watch them deal with stress by buying a lot of things, or drinking, or using substances, that kind of thing, they didn't really teach you how to handle stress. And if you don't know what you don't know, and you just kind of hobble together whatever works to survive, to make it out of your childhood, that's great. But a lot of times then, as an adult, it stops being functional. It starts harming you. We want people to be able to thrive. Yeah. So I think there are lots of things that go into what makes some people handle stress better. Also, so this is another metaphor that I use. I talk about like when your plate is full. Everybody knows kind of that saying, but I talk about what kind of plate do you have? Do you have a paper plate where if things get too heavy, it all falls through? And you're talking to somebody who's got like, a nice ceramic china plate, and it's like, I don't understand why you're not handling this well. Like, we have the exact same things on our plate. And it's like, well, yeah, you have different plates. We want to upgrade you. We want to get you from the paper plate. Maybe move you to styrofoam, and then like
Chinette.
Styrofoam and then plastic, and then that's a metaphor that uses. I want you to be able to hold more on your plate and not feel like everything's gonna fall through.
Yeah, that's a really good metaphor. I like that. So we get to the point of being tired of being stressed out. But we're just like, we've had too much. We recognize that stress is causing us issues, like physical, mental health issues. What can we do about that? What can we do to help our bodies, our minds cope with stress?
Yeah. So I know we talked about self-care in a previous podcast.
Please watch that podcast. It is titled Self-Care.
But engaging in self-care in whatever ways can help alleviate that stress, because you're taking care of your body and your needs. Other ways of handling it: reach out to your support system, whoever that is, family, friends, coworkers, peers, people in organizations. Maybe it's your sorority sisters, your fraternity brothers, whoever. If you're in a grad program, reaching out to your cohorts, I feel like is always a thing that we end up doing. Going to see a therapist if this is something that's like, it is truly making it hard for you to function. It's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to go to class. I'm skipping class all the time. I can't turn in any assignments because I'm so stressed that I can't even think about sitting down to it. Please go see somebody. I don't want people to feel like they can't be vulnerable and come in and ask for help, and not, I want them to do that, because it can be really hard to deal with all of that by yourself. And things like breathing techniques and mindfulness meditation. I know people are always like, I don't know if that'll work for me, because it's like really simple. And I'm like, I promise if you try it, it will work. Not all of them are going to work for each person. Each person's got different likes and dislikes and what works for them, but try them all.
You mentioned how like sometimes it's hard for people to ask for help. I really identify with that. I'm an only child. I did it my own. I was independent, like maybe a little bit too independent. And like just recognizing that it's not a failing to ask for help, but it's actually a show of strength to ask for help. So that's definitely something that I've experienced in my own dealing with stress. Just taking a step back and saying, okay, friends, loved ones, I need help. It is time for you to pay me back.
Yes, absolutely. When people come in, especially for like crisis interventions, or they come in and they say, this is the first time I've ever come in and talked to a therapist before, I always tell them that is the hardest step. That is like, I'm not saying that like there's not going to be difficulties or uncomfortability within therapy. That's kind of one of the things that we do, is to push a little bit on things. but that coming in and asking for that help is so hard because you're making yourself vulnerable and saying, I can't do this by myself. I need somebody else. I need additional support.
Yeah, it's really that vulnerability. Great point.
Mm-hmm.
In the previous question, you mentioned some tools that will help with anxiety and stress, like talking to friends, mindfulness, self-care. So would these tools also be useful in extremely stressful situations that could trigger a traumatic response?
So, yes and no.
Okay.
I'm going to say it depends on what level you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're like at a beginning level, we haven't built up to, we're having a panic attack, we're not functioning, that kind of thing, those things can help. There's a certain point though where those aren't useful. Those are tools for lower level anxieties, lower level stresses. So some of the ones that I talk to people about, and I know they're going to sound goofy, when people are having panic attacks is we have to have a sensory change. For whatever reason, like when we're having a panic attack, our brain is stuck just in this loop of the worst thing is going to happen. I'm panicking. I can't do anything about it. And again and again and again, we just kind of cycle through it, and there's true panic. One way that you can shock your body out of that is to do a sensory change. So I tell people there are 3 things that I tell them to keep on hand. Something that's cold, ice pack, popsicle, reusable ice cubes, bag of peas in the fridge that you're never going to eat, in the freezer that you're never going to eat. Whatever it is, you are experiencing high levels of anxiety. Put it on your chest, put it on your pulse points, whether that's like your wrists or right here on your jawline, and your brain will literally go, whoa, it's cold now. Why is it cold? And it stops focusing on that panic so much, and it helps to pull you out of that panic attack. Same thing, sensory things. Sour candies or hot sauce. I tell people, keep warheads in your backpack, keep them in your bathroom, in your dorm room, in your office, wherever, and eat them if you start to, notice that you are feeling higher levels of anxiety. And if I always say, if you're somebody that, has a really high tolerance to sour candy, do hot sauce. Like, just literally whatever you have, like carry a spoon and like a mini bottle of whatever hot sauce is going to shock you enough, and literally just dump it on the spoon and eat it.
What if you have a high tolerance for hot sauce? I love spicy food, and I often take challenges to eat spicy stuff.
See, then I'm giving you the sour candy.
Okay.
So usually if you're both, then we're going with just the cold things, because no matter what, it's not like you have this super high tolerance to like freezing things on your body. It's going to still shock you enough. Another one that I tell people to do, brains are so easily tricked. Start doing jumping jacks or push-ups if you notice your heart rate is spiking really high. Because your brain goes, oh, we're not anxious. We're working out. Oh, duh. And do it until either you can't do it anymore. I tell people generally like 5 minutes, or as long as like your body can last. Because for some people, a minute is the most that they can do. But it is going, like, once you stop, your body will go, oh, okay, we're done working out, and then it naturally starts to calm you down.
I actually do that, and I know like every time at 7 minutes, I feel it, just like a wave crashing over me, and suddenly I don't feel that energy. I feel that, oh, okay, everything's all right, we're gonna be fine. And like that's just walking in place. Because winter's in Frostburg, you're not gonna go out and walk at like 9 o'clock at night. So like just walking in place in my living room does that for me.
Or turning on music and just like shaking your body. Does the exact same thing. It helps
physical
release.
Activity is just so huge. Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think? What would you say are your favorite ways of eliminating stress?
Oh, this is really good. I'm trying to think of, what are my favorite ways of eliminating stress? I like doing preventative stuff, so I try and like time manage. I try and make sure that I'm going to see my therapist when I have an appointment, that I'm seeing him weekly or bi-weekly. Those things help me alleviate stress. Asking for help, which has been a hard one. You talked about like being independent, or even being the oldest and being somebody who has like a lot of responsibilities for younger siblings. Totally trained into me of like, you got it, you can do this, strong, independent woman. So going to friends or coworkers or peers and being like, listen, I don't got this. Or do you have any ideas of what I could do with this? that is a way, that has been a really hard one for me to learn, but it is so valuable that like, I'm like, no, like I have to let myself be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Also, just like when I start feeling real stress, I'm a crier. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna take like an hour and I'm just gonna feel my feelings and like cry and let it out. And then like most of the time, 15 minutes after I'm finished, I'm like, okay, I feel way better now. And then I move along.
I've definitely experienced that for myself, like trying to hold it in, be strong for everybody else. But then when I get that 5 minutes, I can go to the bathroom and just like ugly cry. That's really where I start to express my own emotions, get it out, and I can like get it back together.
Yeah.
And I do. I feel so much better afterwards, and it doesn't make logical sense that you would feel better after crying, but that's how it is for me.
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, just like stress being a very natural response, crying in response to being incredibly stressed is a natural response. It's how your body deals with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was gonna say, like when you were mentioning when you go to the bathroom and you cry, that moment when you feel it and you're around other people and it's building up in your chest, when you do cry, all that does go away and it feels so good. But that moment when it's building up, it feels so bad.
It's heavy.
Especially when you're not a person who feels comfortable crying in front of other people.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I'm that person. That independence, I'm telling you.
Yeah. And you mentioned chronic stress being a reaction of long-term stress, right? So how does that affect your physical and mental, like long-term? Like, does it wear you down?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to pick up on a thing that it doesn't affect. Chronic stress leads to lots of long-term physical health problems. It's been linked to like cardiovascular diseases. It's been linked to diabetes. It's been linked to flare-ups and autoimmune disorders. For mental health, it can lead to things like anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder. It's about being around people. And I think it just makes you like tired in a way that is like hard to describe. Like it's like tired to the bone, and you're not like physically, well, I mean, you can be physically tired too, but it's like tired in a way that like sleep and rest don't always touch. And being keyed in and all constantly on that survival mode, I feel like sometimes we don't get to engage in like joy and relaxation. A great example of this that's very recent is, I don't know if either of you watched Encanto. Luisa in Encanto has chronic stress because she has all of this pressure and it builds and it builds and it builds and she feels like she's gonna pop. And in that song, she talks about, man, if I could let this go, if there were ways that I could deal with it, I could make room for nice things in my life and I could relax and not constantly feel the stress, pressure. I mean, even Isabella deals with that in a very similar way of avoid, only look perfect to other people. And putting that out there takes a toll on her. She can't kind of engage in who she wants to be. And I feel like those are great examples of like chronic stress and how they can affect your life.
I think a lot of people identify with Luisa.
Yes.
A lot of people.
Especially older siblings like she would. Or just people who just deal with a lot of stress, like you said. Like my younger cousin, she was like, I love Luisa, she's my favorite character. I love her song. Like, and I'm like, girl, you're 7 years old. How do you know?
How can you identify
How did you feel that? But
oh, that's funny.
Another thing that you mentioned I wanted to talk about, you were talking about social anxiety. So I recently realized that my social media is really low a lot of the time. So and I do have anxiety and stress, and I am stressed out most of the time. So does that affect my social media? Because it's not necessarily social anxiety, but it's like I can't be around a lot of people for a long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that anxiety can do is it makes everything like overstimulating. Sounds, noises, smells, even like eating things sometimes you're like, this is too intense, can't do it. Oftentimes for people it's light and sound. There's the ones that I find the most often, sometimes smell, where it just becomes too much. And so that affects then your social meter because, if people are around and they're loud and even like talking normally becomes too much, I can't be around you anymore. You guys have wiped me out. And then just in addition to that, stress exhausts you. it is your body expending energy because it thinks that you're in survival mode. So it's constantly pumping extra blood to your muscles so you can run away or you can fight. And so when all of that energy is being expended, even if you want to see your friends and you want to spend time with them, you're like, yo, I can't. I cannot do it. I am exhausted. And like being around people is too much energy for me. I have to be just with me.
Very good question. Yeah. So when we're looking at the community, what types of resources are there out for people in the community who are struggling with stress issues?
Yeah. So I think these are going to be very similar to, if you watch the self-care podcast, you're going to hear me repeating myself a lot, but like engaging with friends, or I think one way to, in the community, is to take a step back, to not feel obligated to do all of these things all of the time.
Oh, being able to say no.
No.
Yes.
That's
Look at
a
that.
conversation
Yeah.
time.
No is a necessary sentence to
Yes.
expend, because if you are constantly saying yes to everybody, well, then something like I tell my clients, you have too much on your plate. Either you are going to make the choice of what's going to end and what you get to have that power, or something else is going to make that choice for you, whether that's your brain, your body, or somebody else, and it might not be the thing that you want to end. So what are we choosing here?
Right.
Because not making a choice, okay, that's fine, something else will choose for you.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely saying no. Going to see a therapist. I mean, if you are dealing with long-term chronic stress, it's like to make it like a body equivalent, it's like dealing with a long-term chronic pain issue versus like dealing with a cold. Like, short-term stress, cold, there are things, okay, I'm gonna, be easy on myself, I'm gonna drink some extra water, I'm gonna rest some more. When you're dealing with like chronic though, we have to go see professionals to help us undo some of those things, because a lot of them are gonna be really, really ingrained in us. So people who have the opportunity and the privilege to engage in mental health care in whatever way they can, totally gonna recommend that please go engage in that, please do it. Trying to find ways to relax, I think for everybody it's kind of individualized, and for some people it's going on a run, for some people it's going to be, eating sushi on your couch and binge watching Grey's Anatomy, like whatever it is that you're gonna do, give yourself that space to try to engage in relaxation and try to not feel guilty about engaging in that relaxation.
So for students, as a student, what resources are available on this campus for us to deal with our stress?
Yeah, definitely the CAPS office, biased, but yes, please come to the CAPS office, especially if you're dealing with like the chronic ones. But when we're dealing with like short-term, midterms, finals, those kind of things, there are lots of events that happen on campus that I think sometimes students are like, do I want to go to like a campus-sponsored event on campus? Try it. Because sometimes they're fun, and you never know what you're going to get out of it. So things like, I'm not even sure if we still do Late at Lanes, or going to Late at Lane, going to, I know that I think last semester a fraternity put on, like, you could go and hang out with puppies for a little bit during, I think it was during finals week. So like going to do that, go like, or if you have a friend who's got a pet, you just walk in and be like, hey, I'm gonna hang out with your cat for a minute. You say, I don't get to see you, I'm just gonna hang out with the animal. Doing things like that, I think is a great way. Reach out to your friends, because if it's finals week, I'm gonna take a huge shot in the dark that your friends are probably also stressed and maybe need some extra support, and just taking an evening off to like, okay, you know what? I need some space to recuperate. Let's hang out together. Or, I'm going to set you up on FaceTime. You're not going to talk. I'm not going to talk, but we're going to kind of exist in a virtual space together.
That's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, see?
Just exist with each other. Don't say anything to me. Just exist.
Yeah, and I think, of course, coming to the SAFE office as well. Great choice. You guys are there to talk to, and there are resources in the SAFE office for how to handle stress and anxiety when they're coming up.
Yeah, and did you have something? Okay. So yeah, in the SAFE office, we also provide, like Emily was saying, we provide resources through educational programming, peer mentoring, and moral support. So please come visit us. Please come visit Emily in the CAPS office. And Thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for being a part of our PAWSCAST. This health and wellness podcast is brought to you by the Prevention Center and Peer Education Network at Frostburg State University. If you would like more information about our programs, visit us in Pullen Hall 109 or call us at 301-687-4761. Or you could also send us an email at safeoffice@frostburg.edu.